So I'm John Eversley. I'm MD of WPNC on the agency side, and I shall be talking through part of the tips today. Also hosting will be Vicky, who's looking after some of the other parts. So Vicky is MD on the digital side of the agency, and obviously we work very closely together, and we'll be doing a bit of a to and fro with the presentation this morning, and hopefully we'll make up some time, but we'll try not to go too quickly. Just to say that today's about top tips and trends, and we've had lots of members of the team putting forward their thoughts, views, observations, and some of the conversations they've been having. And Vicky and I are very happy to share these with you today. So you might see one or two names pop up on screen as we flip through with a few slides. Maybe people you know. There's some people that we're crediting, so there'll be some credits for on the screen. Relax and enjoy the next 20 minutes. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat zone, and hopefully we'll come at the end, and you'll still be able to stay with us for a little bit of a discussion around what these trends might be. So,
and as we are started late, if you do want to email us any questions afterwards, if you do have to drop off later, then that'll be fine too. Right.
Absolutely. So let's kick off with the first one. Thank you, Vicky, for sharing the screen. So let's kick off with the first one. First one is sort of combines two of my favorite subjects, Christmas and football. Some of you may be aware that this year is the FIFA World Cup, and normally we see the World Cup in the summer months after the football season has ended. This year, the World Cup is in Qatar. There's been lots of controversy around that. It's obviously been in the news, but even more controversial and much more of an effect on our sector here in fundraising. The timing of the World Cup is between the middle of November and the middle of December, so it's bang in the season of our Christmas appeals. That's going to bring, I think, quite a few issues for us this year. Sorry, excuse me. It's going to bring a few issues for us this year, and typically we're going to be looking at so some of the things we've learned from previous World Cups in the summer. It doesn't really affect response rates, but what it does do is it adds media inflation. So we can see already that come December, come late November, and December, we'll probably be seeing very crowded airwaves. We're going to be having a lot of we're going to have media inflation, as I say, so the cost and the rates will go up. Our audience will certainly be very distracted, and they'll be bombarded with a lot of messages via all channels. So how do we combat that? And how do we make sure our Christmas campaigns are as successful as they have been? Well, that's going to take a lot of planning, I think. I think we need to start planning much, much earlier than usual. There was some conversation with some of the media guys, of course, but the full program of the football isn't quite solidified yet. There's still playoffs happening, so that doesn't really help us. But one of the things I think we can say is that we'll be needing to use very, very savvy measures. We may even have to start earlier. We may be moving some of our fundraising communication start earlier in November ahead of the football. We'll be using other channels much more so than just on TV, and we'll be needing to cut through and certainly make a real hit and a dent to try and combat and cut through the noise. So just something to say quite early on, look at Christmas 2022. It really is going to be very different this year with the football. So the second tip or trend to talk about is one about everyday heroes, we've called that. And the creative teams have been talking very much about this. And we've seen in the last 2 years, certainly, we've seen the emergence of the likes of Captain Tom Moore. We've seen people thanking the NHS. We've seen unsung heroes across from the public. We've seen people step forward, do great things, inspiring things, and they've really captivated the public. Certainly in the media, in the media's eyes, we've seen him on Breakfast TV. We've seen him throughout TV scheduling and on our screens. One of the things that we think we're going to need to do this year is to continue that engagement with the public and really use our unsung heroes. And we started to think about all of the charities. I'm sure you've all got unsung heroes within your organizations. There are people who are doing fantastic things, people people on the front line. These are stories that we need to tell. We could do that in TV, we can do it on social media, in films. It's a case of bringing forward some of those unsung heroes and really make them central and right at the front of some of your fundraising messages and appeals. It doesn't always have to be those people on the front line. It can also be turning your donors into unsung heroes. Bringing stories of supporters, that's another way. So we could look at it both ends of the lens, and so people within your organization and also the supporters. It's a case of how you package it up and how you present these people as unsung heroes. So I think there's a real opportunity to do something creatively with that this year. Over to you, Vicky.
So number 3 is in trend from charities recently, as we're starting to come out of the pandemic, of creating new digital subscription products. So the idea of these subscriptions or memberships is to encourage a regular monthly gift, but also giving something back to the subscriber, so a view that they get something for their monthly gift. So I put a couple of examples here. So we've recently worked with BHF, British Heart Foundation, to launch My BHF membership last year. It's a brand new health and wellbeing membership. It was piloted last summer and is now been launched fully. The idea is it's got tailored content based on users' interest, and they receive content each month. And then even more recently, that prostate cancer UK. We also helped launch called Move for Men. Again, this is a sort of a monthly fitness and wellbeing membership. Again, sort of similar sort of price point each month. But although these are both health-related charities, the idea is that, you know, there's lots of other examples out there, and I know some charities are working with now to launch some subscriptions like this. So the point back to you is, are there areas of regular giving that you could look at, or any sort of membership or subscription schemes that you could look at that, at your charity to help encourage those regular gifts? The 4th trend is around peer-to-peer. So with digital advances come increasing levels of fake news and bot interference, and we all know the public are not really sure what's real anymore, and consumer trust in brands is at an all-time low. And this presents huge challenges for charities wanting to get across their message. So in a world full of information resulting in public cynicism, word of mouth has actually become more important than ever, really. You know, we all know that 92% of people trust in recommendations from a friend. So in 2022, it's time to think of peer-to-peer fundraising, not just about events, and think about it beyond events. So our thought here is how can those who already trust you help you reach others? So the idea is to take that thought away and have a think about that. Back to you, John.
Okay, so on to number 5, rattling through the charts. Number 5 is one about digital fatigue. Now, that may seem sort of a strange concept for me to put forward, but I think in the context, it really does stack up for this year. Certainly in the last 2 years, the records are showing, you know, huge numbers of screen times. We're seeing cohorts and sectors, segments using social media, using iPads, using their phones, and they're on screen a lot more than they had been previously. During that time, I think there's been an awful lot of messaging through those channels too. So we're seeing certainly a bombardment of audiences with digital messages. And so if that's the case, then how do you cut through that sequence of messaging? How do you cut through the activity that people have got used to on using digital? Well, one of the tactics, and one thing we may consider more this year, is direct mail. Now, direct mail, I know it's been maligned a few times over the last couple of years, but to be perfectly honest, direct mail has got a real part to play in bringing forward the messages to some of our audiences. We're seeing that it's absolutely helping to cut through in some of the campaigns that we've been preparing. Market Reach, I'm sure you're familiar with Market Reach through Royal Mail. They conduct a whole series of research and insight projects And one thing that struck us quite recently was the record levels of impact and engagement that the audience is showing. Recent study showed 96% of the UK male has now been engaged with, certainly since lockdown. So with lockdown, yes, there's been lots of digital messaging, but there's also lots of print-based acknowledgement and readership as well. So I think in that situation, we can see during the course of this year many campaigns going out where we've got integrated messages, whether it's TV and digital and mail, or it might be digital, social media and mail. But there certainly is a role to play in terms of integrated messages and trying to get the whole communication across, just to break through and, as I say, combat some of that digital fatigue. Number 6, Vicky, please, is one which so many of you will have heard many members of the WPNC team talk about this in the past, and it hasn't gone away. In fact, if anything, I think it's probably a stronger message that we need to get across this year, and that is the request really to make a statement and not be shy about making that ask. It really is about showing the need. You'll have heard us talk before about showing the need, be impactful, be bold, be brave, be strong. I think this year, where we're going to see all sorts of disruption within the marketplace, we're going to see our audiences. I don't want to use the word struggle, but they're certainly going to come under pressure with their disposable incomes, with their household finances. They'll be thinking twice about every decision they make. We will have to try much harder to make sure we get our message across and we earn that pound. So in doing so, I think what we'll need to do is show much more need. We're going to have to be absolutely clear about it. In some cases, it's going to have to be dramatically clear to get that message across. So I think one of the things, so if you take that thought forward just another step, you're saying, okay, so in a year when household income is going to struggle, the public are going to be struggling, we may also be seeing some of our organisations, some of the charities may also see shortfalls within their funding, and in trying to combat that and turn that around, there are tactics open to us, and emergency appeal is up there. It's the one that always cuts through, and it really engages supporters. They really do get the opportunity to make a real difference. So in doing that, I think showing the need and an emergency appeal, the combination of the two, and being really strong and hard about it, can help us. And that's one of the things that we would recommend people look at this year. So it's show the need, absolutely use real cases, be authentic about it, use real people, and it really is down to real storytelling. So yes, that's show the need and be absolutely clear about it. Vicky.
Great. So legacies. Everyone's been talking about legacies. I'm sure many of you are investing. Industry data shows that time is ripe to promote gifts in wills at every opportunity you can. We know many charities that are increasing their activity in this area. We're working with quite a few doing so, and helping market their legacy gifts. But so because of that, because there's so many charities also looking at legacies, it's really important to develop a clear proposition that's going to be vital for getting your message across. But one of the things we're thinking around is around data. So, many charities don't necessarily use their data as well as they could. But one of the aspects of data with legacies is around age, using age as a mean of segmenting your files under legacies. So, because attitudes to leaving your gift in a will, leaving a gift in a will will vary differently by cohort, from the civic generation who did it because it was the right thing to do, to baby boomers who don't necessarily want to share information of their intentions, and they like to be independent minded, and where trust is important. And then of course you've got the younger generations who are different again. So our point is that sort of more insight about your prospective target audience will be needed to cut through with your legacy marketing and get your legacy message across. Back to you, John.
Okay, over to me. This is the final one for me, another couple to come from Vicky, but the final one from me really is about a focus on the supportive relationship. And so I've talked a lot about acquisition, and I've talked a lot about getting messages and driving awareness through other channels. But I think we can't let the opportunity go without saying, actually, we also need to look at how we develop, build, and strengthen our relationships with the supporters. So if you take a step back and say, okay, so strong relationship with supporters. So how does that come about? What are the key milestones or pillars of that? So if you just take honesty, frequent communication, and commitment as real bedrocks of that, then I think the honesty and the communication sort of follows, but it really is about making sure we build more commitment into those communications with the with our supporters. So what do I mean by that? It's, building a relationship takes a lot of time, effort, real energy, and to make it work really hard, it takes even more work and more energy. So to do that, it's a case of building dialogue. It's about really showing you care, really showing that commitment. So engaging your supporters, asking them to or inviting them to ask questions back and engage in dialogue. So I can see some evaluation of donor programs right now or supported journeys where we're looking to inject that bit of that extra communication and commitment back. So everyone else will be trying to talk to supporters. Everyone wants to build a load of friends, and supporters are friends. You need to try and build a pool of friends. So so if there's one thing that I should leave you with, really, it's about looking at your supporter journey, look at your comms program, look at what you're saying to your supporters, and ask the question, are we driving enough commitment? Are we committing ourselves enough to that supporter? Are they experiencing that from us? So so there are ways and means of looking at how we might do that, and how you might use your communication to strengthen that relationship by driving more commitment. That's one of the things that we should leave you with. Great. Back to you, Vicky.
So number 9 is around data and value exchange and millennials. So the number of consumers prepared to share their insight with brands has declined 33% since 2018. This has obviously been compounded by the pandemic, with a 54% increase in awareness around data privacy. So consumers understand their data has value now, and they share it with you, but only for what it's worth. And on the other hand, research has shown that younger generations are actually willing to share their data if it helps others. So around 45% of millennials have shared COVID-19 health data, for example, compared with just 21% of boomers. So, meaning that millennials are twice as more likely to share their data than boomers. So our point here with this trend is there an opportunity to grow your fundraising from millennials using value exchange? And ideally, how can you make that data gathering a genuine value exchange as well, without it being too transactional? So, definitely worth thinking about. If millennials are one of your target audiences to look at, then think about data and value exchange as part of your fundraising mix for that. And last but not least, I'd love to end on something a bit more technical, but interesting for fundraisers, I hope, which is around NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. Some of you maybe have heard of this, mentioned in the news, some may not. It could potentially represent an exciting and potentially lucrative new fundraising avenue for many organisations. So it stands for non-fungible token. Just to give you a background what it is, it basically means it's a digital asset that is unique and can't be replaced with anything else. Mainly at the moment, NFTs tend to be around original digital artwork, but it could be anything digital, could be an NFT, and it's stored on the blockchain, and the token part of it represents who owns it. So I guess the analogy for those who haven't got a clue what I'm talking about is that, imagine obviously the original painting of the Mona Lisa is completely unique. It's worth, however many, 800 odd million or something, and worth a lot of money. It doesn't stop people from taking photos of it or replicas or having, their own copies of it on their walls of the Mona Lisa, but there'll only ever be one original. And that's what an NFT is, but with a digital asset. It's only one original. So I guess, why is this interesting to charities? Well, in the States, this has already started taking off quite a lot. In America, some charities have been creating their own unique digital assets and selling them at auctions, or they've had artists and supporters create NFTs and donating the income. I should also warn you that the income generally comes as Bitcoin, so it's not cash yet, but it then could be translated. And there's an example here on the left there of a cat there, which is one of the blazed cats. There's lots of different versions of them. Each one is unique, and it's raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for Mental Health America, for example. You'll see that tweet there at the bottom from Jack Dorsey, who's the Twitter's founder and CEO. He sold his very first tweet recently for $3 million, and then converted it to Bitcoin and had it donated to a charity. That one in the middle there is a CryptoPunk image that somebody created, and that sold for $7.6 million. So there's big money out there. And people are starting to buy them, NFTs, with a view that thinking that they will increase in value over time and then sell them. However, big word of caution here before you start jumping into it. The technology underpinning them, blockchain, and Bitcoin is ultimately very bad for the planet. A single NFT transaction is the equivalent of the CO2 output of a 2-hour flight, or boiling a kettle 4,500 times. So you do need to be mindful of this. WWF recently, they've got into trouble. Unfortunately, they launched, it seemed like a great idea of non-fungible animals. Animals becoming extinct. Talking about some of those endangered species, and there being only potentially an NFT equivalent in the end. And so what they did is they asked artists to create unique digital artwork of these 10 endangered species, with a view to then sell them and auction them and then raise some money for them. It started raising quite a lot of money, but then there was unfortunately a huge backlash where they had to stop sales because of the fact of the impact on the planet. Started getting some quite bad press on them. So my point with this one is it's definitely something that should be on your radar and start to think about. Keep that notion of caution there. But there'll definitely be more coming out this year around NFTs. And from our point of view, we'll also be sharing more on this in coming blogs and articles in the coming months. So that's it. Appreciate it. Sorry for those of you, I know we've had to drop off your 10 o'clock meetings. I know there's still quite a few of you still left on. So happy to jump it over to questions. I can see a couple have already jumped into the chat, so we can start with those. But whilst you're thinking of any questions, then just to tell you a little bit about the next webinars coming as well. So we've got a QR code there you can scan to be able to sign up to the next webinars. But we have donor acquisition, which is next on 9th of March. That covers cross-channel and give you some tips and trends on how to acquire new donors. But it is multi-channel. And then on 16th of March, we have legacy marketing and top 10 trends on there. And did have next week online donation, which I was going to be hosting on how to improve your online donations. Unfortunately, I've had to put that back to the end of the month because I need to take some time off at the beginning of March. So you'll be, for those of you who've already signed up, you'll be getting an email about that. But those who haven't signed up, feel free to do so. So let me just check on questions for those who are here. I've got one here that says, one for you, John. So it says, do you think UK Mail will continue to see high percentages of engagement, given that restrictions have eased and people return to work life and are spending less time at home?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, it's about predicting how people are going to behave with as the world changes back, or how much will the world change back. I think the only thing we can say, I think, in response to the question is, yep, we've had massive levels of engagement. Royal Mail or UK Mail is showing 96% with people staying at home during lockdown. The hybrid model seems to be the one that's emerging. So people will be at home more than they were before the pandemic, but they'll also be at work more often than they were during the pandemic. So there'll be 3 days in the office, typically 3 days, 1 day, 2 day. So I think what we can expect to see is people still engaging with mail at the higher levels than they were prior to the pandemic. All I would say is that you really need to make sure that the mail is absolutely relevant. That's always been the cornerstone of this, to make sure that the mail packs from the front to the letter, everything else is all about absolutely relevant and pertinent to the individual receiving it. So that's how you're going to get your impact, and that's how engagement will stay up.
Great. Next question is going back to the first one, which was the World Cup. So the question is there an opportunity to capitalise or exploit the FIFA 2022 through integrating football into campaigns? So for example, you know, Santa footy matches, instead of Santa runs. It's a nice idea, Angela. Yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts, John, or whether I know the team are sort of putting together a whole bunch of thoughts on this, aren't they, that we're planning to share?
Literally just about to say that. I think so. You won't be surprised. On my slide, I had the start of the Santa race. I can actually see that turning into all sorts of mass events around football and all sorts of things. So yes, I think there are plenty of opportunities to be creative. But even before we get to that level, I think we need to be quite strategic about it, and we need to be looking at planning how we will use the channels that are usually open to us, and how we can maximise those channels and that opportunity. There's a lot of work and thinking going on right now. Over the next few weeks, we'll be certainly issuing some of our thoughts and blogs, and we'll be having conversations with partners, and we'll be sharing some of that information with. I mean, all of you guys have registered to the webinar, so automatically we'll be able to send you some of our updates. But please do look out for some of our posts and social media over the next few weeks. You'll be hearing a bit more about it. I think this is quite a big issue for this year, which is why I put it as number one, because obviously, you know, Christmas is the key peak for all of us, and the fact that FIFA have chosen to do this really hasn't helped. But hey, it's an opportunity. Out of a problem, we can find some great creative solutions.
Maybe we can find a way to have Christmas in October or something this year. I think that's it for the questions for the moment. So thank you very much to everybody. We'll leave it there and let you get back to getting another coffee. And again, apologies for starting late this morning. The gremlins of my laptop freezing everything. So what we will do is we'll happily send this out as a recording as well, particularly for those who had to drop off at 10 o'clock. But thank you very much. Hope you found it useful, and do tune in for future webinars as we've got there. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Em.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Em. Bye-bye.